This is Twit.
Line 4, Rubin, Kelowna, British Columbia. Hello, Rubin.
Hello. I was wondering if you have any tips on portrait and landscape photography.
Oh, you mean whether you should take pictures with the camera upright or sideways?
I have.
Or do you mean? You mean pictures of people versus pictures of land? I get it.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the computer industry has co-opted those terms, haven't they?
Yeah.
So, which do you want to do? Because they're really different.
I've been more focused on landscape photography.
All right. So generally, when people do landscape photography, they do wider lenses, although that's not always the best way to do it, but they do wider lenses because you want to get the whole horizon or get the whole mountain, that kind of thing. Wider, if you're using an interchangeable lens camera, then wider would be something like anything from 16 to 35 millimeters. If you're using a point and shoot, it'll be zoomed all the way in, right? And that's usually on a point and shoot about 24 millimeters. So that's slightly wide. Now the problem with wide is as you get to the edges of a wide, like 16 and wider, it gets a little distorted. It gets a little curvature in there, and that may not be something you want. So you may be zooming in a little bit from 16. 24 usually. I have a 24 lens I really like. It's not just for, by the way, I use it not just for buildings and landscapes, but it's a great people lens for street shooting and for parties and that kind of thing. It gets more of it's a good lens for storytelling. Portrait is the opposite. Portrait, you usually want to focus on a person or a pet, one thing, and you want everything to fall out in the background. And choosing a portrait lens it's almost the opposite of a landscape lens. A landscape lens will be wider. It's usually in daylight, so it doesn't have to be super fast. You do want good quality so you don't get lens distortion, or they call it aberrations. But the portrait photography, I like them a little bit longer. People often want 85 millimeters, so you don't have to get right up in somebody's face. The other reason for that is you'll notice with a wide-angle lens, if you get up in somebody's face, their nose takes on huge proportions, which can be fun, but often not very flattering. So often you'll see people recommending 80, and when I say the lens length, 85 millimeters or 35 or 16, I'm talking on a full frame lens. If you're using a smaller frame like APS-C or Micro Four Thirds, there's a multiplier. But sometimes they'll say if same as 85 millimeters on a full frame lens. 85 millimeters, and then sometimes you want it to be fast. You want it to be fast not necessarily because you're taking it in dim light, although often you are. Some of the best portraits are somebody sitting by a window with light coming in from the side, natural light, and that may be a little darker. So a fast lens is good for that, but the main reason you want a fast lens is for a reduced depth of field, and this gets a little bit complicated, but you'll know if you look at people like Annie Leibovitz, the great photographers, if they have a background, often they'll do it on a white background. They'll have a seamless background, so there's nothing to distract from the person's face. But if they don't have that, if they're doing it on a street or if they're doing it somewhere where there's stuff going on, you'll notice that the background is blurry. That's because they have a shallow depth of focus. The focus is on the person's face. Everything behind that person is blurry. And you do that with a wide open lens, f1.4. f1.8, f2, or maybe even down to f1.2. So you let more light in, but you also blur the background. That makes a good portrait lens. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.